everyone, I'm Cindy Winget, the author of 3 Gothic horror novels, and welcome to my channel. So we're in December, we're at the end of the year, and I already did my best of 2024 list, so now it's time to do my worst books of 2024. So these are my 10 worst books that just did not work for me. I should have explained this in my last video, but I didn't. But these aren't necessarily books that were released in 2024. They're just books that I read this year. So some of them are backlist titles. So let's go ahead and get started. These are in no particular order. I only have 3 physical copies. The rest I have already unhauled. So let's do those ones first. First we have All I Want by Darcy Bell. And I was very excited for this one. I thought it was going to be really fun. This is like a haunted house thriller type book, but unfortunately it didn't work for me. And first of all, the very end, worst decision ever the author could have made. Worst ending I've ever read. So I already knew that going in. I didn't know what it was, but I had people tell me, don't read that blog or don't read the last chapter or whatever. I did. I read it. Because obviously I'm curious, I have to see, and I agree, it's the worst ending ever. But that's not the reason I hated this book. Because I already went into it knowing the ending was going to suck, and so I thought the journey would at least be fun. But no, it wasn't. I thought it was kind of boring, and it just didn't quite do it for me. I can't honestly even remember. I'm sure there was more to it than that. I have a visceral reaction to it that I didn't like it, but I don't remember the reasons why, which is probably a point against it that I can't even remember. So, yeah, bummer. But this does take place at Christmas time and has like a Christmas pageant as part of the story. So if you want to try it out and see for yourself whether it's a good one or not, then this would be a good time of the year to pick it up. Just know that the ending does suck, just so you know. But yeah, this is like a haunted house story where this couple moves into this house, which is very interesting because it has a theater attached to it. And they're both into drama, and so their neighbors are like, oh, put on this Christmas pageant, it'll be so much fun, But yeah, I think it was just like, I don't know, too tropey, but I don't mind haunted house tropes. Like, I love haunted house books and I expect them to be tropey, but I don't know, I think it just didn't work for me in this book. But like I said, I honestly can't remember. I just know it didn't work for me. Okay, so then we have Murder Road by Simone St. James. This one was a huge disappointment, mostly because I love Simone St. James. I think she's a great author and I've really, really loved some of her books. And so I was so happy and thrilled for this book. It was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I was so looking forward to it because this is about a ghost hitchhiker on the side of the road, which is a great trope, and I was just really looking forward to it. But honestly, those ghostly elements kind of took a back burner to the thriller aspects of this book, and the thriller aspects of this book were pretty boring. I could not connect to it. I could not connect to the story, and I was bored, and it was just sucks because I know she can write better than this. And then we have The Nesting by C.J. Cook. This is my first book by C.J. Cook, and I really enjoyed it at first. I thought it was really atmospheric and really good. It had the cold vibes because we're in like Norway or Denmark or somewhere. Yeah, Norway. So I really enjoyed the setting and I really enjoyed the setup. I really enjoyed our main character. It had some good creepy moments. It had a mystery that I was looking forward to solving. But I did a buddy read of this with a friend of mine, and we both agree that it just fell apart in the last third of this book. There was so many plot holes. There was times when I feel like the author legit lied to the reader because the prologue sets up this murder, but then at the end, that's not how the murder happened. And so I feel like I was lied to, and there was characters that by the end, it's like, why were they even there? And all the men in this book sucked, but yet they didn't get any consequences for their bad actions. But yeah, all the girls and women in this book did, even though they were the innocent ones, and I didn't like that. As a writer, I could see some actual problems like head hopping and different structural problems that I feel like the author made There was a lot of typos. Like, there was just so many things about this book that just completely fell apart in the last third. And, so it went from like a 4-star read to like a 2-star read. And that just sucks because this had so much potential to be such a good book, but it just did not stick the landing. Too many questions, and it just didn't work for me. Okay, this next one's probably gonna hurt some of you because I know it's a famous book and people seem to love it. And I read it and was like, why do people love this book so much? So I am talking about I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. And again, this has very snowy vibes. So if you're looking for snowy vibes, go ahead and pick it up during this season. But this just was not for me. I felt like it was very, very obvious what was going on. There was like 2 twists in this book, and I saw both of them from the very beginning. And so for me personally, it didn't have like that wow factor at all. I was just like, okay, yeah, saw that coming. And outside of that, it was so boring. The whole like first half of the book is just driving a car and just talking, and their conversations were so like pretentious, and I just didn't like it. This just did not work for me. Sorry if you love this book. And then I had The Quiet Retreat by Kristen Moglen. And this one, the writing style just wasn't very good. And I thought that the twist was kind of dumb, and I didn't like the characters, and it didn't work for me. I just didn't end up liking this one. Don't really have much else to say about it. And then I have Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein. And I think my biggest issue with this book is it wasn't what I wanted it to be. So I love books about writers and about authors, and I thought this was going to be about Mary Shelley, like writing about Frankenstein and like where she got her inspiration. And I thought it would be like have some creepy elements, because she's writing horror. And I also thought it would have a little bit of like a feminist aspect to it, where Lord Byron and her husband, they were already prolific writers, and this 19-year-old girl comes and shows them up and writes this fantastic book that is even super famous 200 years later, and I just thought it would have more of like feminist bend to it, because these men were despicable and they talked down to her and they kind of treated her like crap. And so I thought at the end she'd be like, well, bam, I just wrote this awesome book, but she didn't have any of that attitude towards it. I don't think by the end of the book the 2 men even read her book, even though it was supposed to be part of the contest, which did happen historically. But yeah, in this book, it didn't have that punchy ending that I was expecting. And the whole book was just about her having kids with this husband that was despicable and mean. And that's just not what I wanted from this book. It's not what I was expecting from this book. And so, yeah, I just didn't like it. And then we have The Shadow Half Remains. And this is a horror, like, dystopian book. And it's a short little novella, and it just didn't work for me. So the first half was pretty decent. You're setting up this dystopian society, and it's one of these ones where, if you look in someone's eyes, then it makes you crazy and you kill people. And so people have kind of spread out and they don't associate because, it would be very hard not to just accidentally glance at someone's eyes. I mean, we're used to, as humans, connecting to other humans in that way. When you're talking to someone, you make eye contact, and so people just stopped associating with each other because it would drive you insane. And I thought that premise was very intriguing and very interesting, and I was excited to learn about the world, because again, when it comes to dystopian novels or sci-fi novels, that's the most interesting part of the story, is the world, and I want to learn about the world. And you did for the most part, but I wanted it to just go like a little bit more in depth with it. And then the second half was just completely like fever dream, and I don't like that. It's just not a style that I care for. It's just confusing, and I know the whole thing is like, is it really happening or is she crazy, but I just don't happen to like that. Like sometimes in thrillers, when you have like the unreliable narrator, it can really work, but when it turns like crazy psycho fever dreamy, I just don't like it. It just irks me. It just does. And I don't know. Then you don't get any answers at the end. It's very ambiguous, and you don't know if it was her being crazy or if this really happened. Really, And then there was like a scene where she was like masturbating with a knife or something, which I really could have done without that scene. So I did not like the last half of this book. It just completely fell apart for me. Did not like it. And then we have The Mystery Writer. And this one I was so sad about because the first beginning third of this book, I loved it. I adored this book. I thought this was going to be a new favorite. I was so excited, and it was about an author and about writing, which I love, and I loved the characters and the setup, and I just was so excited to see where this book was going. Well, I didn't like the way it was going. So it took a turn in the plot and got very like conspiracy theorist, which I don't really care about. And it got confusing, and it was like she was trying to pack way too much into this plot, and it just didn't work for me. And then this author is Australian, and I don't think she really knows that much about America, especially when it comes to guns, and it very well showed. And so I don't know. This book just fell apart, and I was so sad and upset because, like I said, the beginning I loved the beginning, but yeah, it just did not work for me. I did not like it. And then we have Mr. Lullaby. This is a horror book, and it's about this little town that has like crazy things happening, and there's this tunnel where the railroad used to go, and it's like people would disappear into this tunnel, and then you think like maybe something supernatural is coming out of the tunnel and starting to terrorize the town. And then you have like this other storyline where it's like a serial killer, but like a really bizarre type of serial killer. And I'm having a hard time pinpointing why I didn't like this book. It had all the makings of an enjoyable story, but I don't know. It just didn't work for me. There was just something about it that I just didn't like. I just didn't enjoy it. And then the last book in this list is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. And this is like a sci-fi dystopian novel. And it just didn't work for me. I didn't like the characters. There wasn't enough world building. The author tried too much to keep you in the dark on what was going on. But instead of feeling mysterious, it just felt like he was gatekeeping the information, which I dislike. And I don't know, I just didn't find it that fascinating. I didn't find it that interesting. I was pretty bored through most of it. I really honestly didn't care about the mystery. And I didn't care about the characters. And it just, I don't know why I kept reading. I should have just DNF'd it, but I guess I was just waiting for it to get better and wanting to see if the mystery would like surprise me at the end, but it didn't really. And it didn't give me quite enough answers to keep me satisfied. And yeah, it didn't work for me. And I am one of the few people that didn't enjoy the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. That one also didn't work for me, so maybe this author is just not for me. So anyways, those are the 10 books that I read this year that didn't work for me. Worst books of the year, in my opinion. And I do have 20 DNFs that I'm going to not talk about. I'm not going to talk at length about these books, but I just wanted to mention them because I don't think they should be considered like my worst of the year because I didn't actually read them. But I think it's good for readers to know what books have been DNF'd so they either don't waste their own time or, you might see one that you're like, oh, I love that book, and it's just interesting to see people's different takes on books. So if some of your favorites made this list, I'm very sorry. But anyways, I just wanted to do like an honorable mention. So I did have 20 DNFs this year. And those DNFs are The Clinic, The Cruel Prince, Pines by Blake Crouch, The Main Character, The Paris Widow, The Midnight Feast, That Night in the Library, Portrait of a Shadow, That Prince is Mine, Glass Houses, The Housekeeper's Secret, The Monstrous Kind, Slow Dance by Rainbow Rowell, I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, Blondes Die First, The Fury, The Last Thing He Told Me, Two Little Girls in Blue, The Mistletoe Motive, and Right Before Christmas. And these two I will talk at length about in my December wrap-up, so if you're interested, you will find the tea there. But like I said, I'm not going to go into depth with all of these other books, especially because there's 20 of them. But if you are curious why I decided to DNF them, then go ahead and leave a comment and I will happily let you know the reasons why they didn't work for me. Let me know if any of these really worked in your favor. And that's all I have to talk about. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it. I post every Friday and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See ya.